Mr. Chairman, Mr. Sensenbrenner, members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify today. While the SPR is our primary line of defense in the event of an emergency oil supply disruption, each day the current RAK program pulls 70,000 barrels of oil off tight markets at a time of record high prices and volatile geopolitics. Attention to market conditions and the willingness to act in a more flexible and creative manner could achieve the same result, but enable lower cost options for filling the SPR, as well as help address other key energy priorities. The purposes and implementation of the original RAK program in 1999 provides an example of such creativity. In late 1998, oil prices hit historic lows. While moderate oil prices are good for consumers, extremely low prices shut in wells, decimate the workforce, particularly in the oil-producing regions of the country, and destroy the technical infrastructure of the industry, impacts that lead to lower supplies and higher prices in the future. To help mitigate these adverse impacts, the Clinton administration established the RAK program. This provided a market outlet for domestic oil in a glutted market and enabled DOE, without the need for new appropriations, to replace 28 million barrels of oil in the SPR that had been sold 2 years earlier, largely at the direction of Congress, simply to generate revenues. The current RAK program is operating under market conditions that are precisely the opposite of those that the original program was established to exploit. In fact, 2 energy secretaries in both Democratic and Republican administrations elected to pursue the path of do no harm with the RAK program. Secretary Richardson in 2000 and Secretary Abraham in 2003 deferred deliveries under the RAK program for fear that removing even small amounts of oil from the market would increase prices to consumers. Another authority where creativity and flexibility can and should be employed is exchanging oil to acquire oil. We first used this in a significant way to establish a home heating oil reserve in the Northeast in 2000. Chairman Markey was a major supporter of that effort. The rapid stand-up of this reserve, absent appropriations to do so, was accomplished by using this authority and cost us no money. We also conducted a time exchange of oil in September of 2000 when heating oil inventories in New England were 72% lower than in the previous winter. On September 22nd that year, the President directed the Secretary to conduct a time exchange of SPR oil, in effect loaning the market 30 million barrels of oil. The results were immediate. Spot prices dropped by almost 20%. By the end of the year, actual oil prices had decreased by 34%, and there was adequate heating oil supplies for the winter. Importantly, this exchange of 30 million barrels of oil ultimately returned over 35 to the reserve, or a 17% interest payment on that loan. At today's prices, this equates to an additional $500 million of oil in the reserve at no cost to the taxpayer. The energy bill passed last December established the foundation for alternative energy security pathways. Conservative estimates are that by 2022, provisions in that law will reduce net oil imports by well over 2 million barrels per day, in effect increasing the insurance value of the SPR without adding any additional oil to the reserve. Between now and then, however, we have to meet what I call the 80-80-40 challenge, replacing the current 80% fossil fuel consumption with 80% carbon-free or carbon-light energy, renewable energy, and sequestration to avoid the doubling of CO2 emissions in approximately 40 years. That 40 years also roughly equates to the time it will take us to turn over the energy infrastructure. Replacement cost of that infrastructure is estimated to be $12 trillion. To do this, we will need to find new ways to finance key energy technologies and research. Total energy R&D investment in both the U.S. and in the U.S., both public and private, is estimated to be around $5 to $6 billion a year. And according to GAO, DOE's total budget authority for energy R&D has dropped by over 85% since 1978. I offer, without advocating, 3 options for your consideration. First, an outright sale of 40 million barrels of oil from the SPR would generate around $4.5 billion in new revenues. That could help pay, for example, Congressman Inslee's Apollo project. This would have the added benefit of lowering prices to consumers. Notwithstanding attacks that this would diminish our energy security, I note that this would reduce the amount of oil in the SPR to around 660 million barrels, roughly 60 million barrels more than was in the reserve when we went to war in Iraq. Presumably that was deemed sufficient to go to war in the Middle East. Or, second, temporarily suspend the current RIK program, and forcing the sale of that oil into the open market could provide at least $1 billion new to fund key energy research programs. And finally, exchanging 50 million barrels of sweet crude in the reserve for heavy oil in the open market, if done correctly, could net roughly $500 million without reducing the overall volume of the reserve by a single barrel. This, combined with the roughly $590 million currently in the SPR account, would also provide an additional $1 billion for energy research at no cost to the taxpayer. In closing,
you could please summarize.
Yes. In closing, sir, the current policy of taking royalty oil in a continuous flow, regardless of market signals, ignores many of these lessons. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars to put oil in the reserve at today's prices when futures markets offer the same oil at a lower price 12 months from now. Thank you very much.